Welcome, welcome, welcome. How's everybody doing? We're going to get this stream started momentarily. We're going to be talking about X-Men 97 for the most part. Um, I haven't seen or watched anything of note in a while. I haven't been able to watch anime because my anime site disappeared. I guess it's down. I guess I got to find another one or wait for a new one to pop up, which is very distressing because I know I'm missing something. I feel like I'm missing something. But hello, happy Sunday, everybody. This weekend went by way, way, way too fast. AJ3, how you doing, sir? Everybody else who is slowly but surely coming in. Yes, I heard that Funimation was being shut down and that Crunchyroll was basically taking over everything. Is that the is that the long and the short of it? Is that Funimation is going away? Um, I remember reading about that. Um, it's very unfortunate. Uh, that's very unfortunate. Funimation made some really good stuff back in the day. Um, it just goes to show that nothing lasts forever. As unfortunate all of this stuff is, nothing lasts forever. I do kind of want to talk a little bit about Chainsaw Man, um, Volume 14. I just read it, and the guy Tatsuki Fujimoto, he truly does understand comedy and how to reveal character through comedy. And comedy doesn't have to be an extra lighthearted thing. It can reveal darkness. It can reveal evil, but using it to reveal character can be very, very interesting. I think it's a very useful uh, story, a very useful concept for stories. I went on a book sale. Uh, I didn't go to a book sale really. I went to a bookshop. I get bored sometimes. I want to go do stuff. So I went to a bookstore, to two bookstores actually. One of them was, both of them were in Ferndale. They were actually within a couple of minutes of each other. And I picked up the Robert E. Howard Conan book. Um, this is not, of course, the entire series, but it is a collection of weird tales. I don't have any Conan the Barbarian books, so this is very interesting for me to be able to pick this up. It's also difficult for me to actually find Robert E. Howard Conan, um, because so much of the stuff recent, especially the other stuff, is written by other people. I really just want to read Conan as it was written by Robert E. Howard, so I have that. I have a new Donald Goins novel. Um, I love Donald Goins, and we will talk about X-Men mostly. Um, WG Phil says I've been watching a train themed Power Ranger season that Power Rangers skipped to add Pat because the season didn't sell well. The show and most Sentai is on Internet Archive. Huh, that's interesting. I know that most Power Rangers is actually on a YouTube channel. You can just watch Power Rangers on YouTube. I don't know about Super Sentai though. I think Super Sentai you probably will have to dig through it. The season got a lot of heart, and it's about a villain who is obsessed with light, something he can't have. That's interesting. That's very philosophical too. Like, is he like Mole Man from, like he wants to take over the surface world? Um, I also bought the selected writings and speeches of Marcus Garvey. Really, I found Marcus Garvey to be a very interesting character. You know, he's a very interesting figure in Black America. You know, um, but one day, probably one day in Black History Month, we don't have much time left. I may actually put a focus on Marcus Garvey and a couple of the things that I read in that book so far that I want to really discuss because I think it's very interesting, and I do want to pop up and do that once. I may do a pop up surprise stream on it. You know, you never can tell. But since it's not a book, but a selection of writings and speeches, I can skip through it and read what I want to read. All right, let's get into X-Men 97. We 5 minutes in now. So as we know, the X-Men '97 is based off of the animated series, which actually began, I believe, in 1994. X-Men the animated series was absolutely brilliant television. It was fun. It was fast paced. They told stories, very interesting in terms of how they chose to adapt a lot of the comic book material. And everybody knows who the X-Men are, but for most people who have never read a comic book in their lives, they know the X-Men through the X-Men '90s animated series. So the X-Men '90s animated series, like all the Marvel animated series, it kind of got weak at the end, and it kind of petered out. So Disney decided they were going to complete, quote unquote, the series with this X-Men '97 animated series that's supposed to come out, I think, next month. I think it's March 3rd. They're going to start airing episodes. They brought back the old cast with the exception of Jubilee, because Jubilee was played by a white woman and Jubilee is Asian, and they don't want to offend anybody, and they don't want to get the young lady canceled, even though she's probably like 70 or something, now 60 or whatever. She's probably not that old. She's probably like in her 50s or whatever. In any event, but some people are very gassed up off the trailer because they saw Gambit and Wolverine, and they're like, "Yeah, this is gonna rule." I saw it and I basically was like, I, mm, mm, I don't care. I don't like Disney. Like my whole thing with Disney is Disney has always been for girls. You know, it's always been for girls. Even the material that kind of shows men in a positive light has always been for girls. Even stuff that I like Aladdin, like Hercules to a degree, um, like I said Aladdin already. Lion King has always been for girls, and I have been off put by a lot of Disney material, especially lately. Um, I'm definitely, upon seeing the trailer before I even knew about some of the extra stuff, I didn't think it was that great. I didn't like the animation. It looked clunky. It looked kind of choppy. The voice acting, I hated the voice of Wolverine. I wasn't a big fan of Wolverine's voice. I just know they did horrible things to Gambit, which is one of the reasons why I really don't want to watch it. I just know they're gonna do horrible things to Gambit. I just know it. Gambit, in their view, is a sexual harasser and a sex pest. They're going to definitely change Gambit. What got everybody's attention is what they plan to do to Morph. That got a lot of people's attention. That's what everybody's been talking about. Everybody's talking about what they're going to do to Morph. I'm not concerned with Morph that much. I don't like it, and don't get me wrong, I'm going to talk about that. But my whole thing is I'm looking at how the mentality of the people who are creating the product, they work for Disney, and they want to be for modern audiences. They're going to absolutely neuter Gambit. Um, this is not good. This is not good. I don't think I'm a pass. I think I'm a pass, man. I'm really good about not paying too close attention to this stuff. I don't even believe that we should outrage watch it, and that's something that I learned from Professor Geek. I like that mentality. I think some things you do need to watch if you're going to complain about it. You do need to have seen it to complain about it thoroughly and to get people to understand. And I also understand that people on YouTube, they want to have content. So a lot of the YouTubers who are going to stream it, they're going to talk about it, and people are going to be like, "Oh, you shouldn't be watching it. Why do you want to watch it then?" I get that, but most people, if they want to intelligently talk about the product, they're going to watch it. So it's going to happen, but I don't think I'm gonna watch it. I don't think I need to. I run a wrestling channel. So everything I do with that involves animation and comic books and stuff is extra. Um, I could just tell you episode one is probably gonna be nutty. Episode one probably gonna throw people into a goddamn tizzy. That's what happened with Superman, right? Um, that first episode threw people for a loop, and there wasn't a lot of conversation about Superman after that. The show ran its course after the first couple of episodes. It just ran its course. The people who were going to watch it kept watching it. The people who weren't going to watch it stopped watching it. I think it's going to be the same thing here. Unless it's completely and totally wokeified, most people are just going to watch that first episode, get a sense of it, and just be like, "Yeah, I'm good. I don't need to see this." For me, again, it wasn't it wasn't morph. It's what I know they're going to do to Gambit. You know, um, Stone Mexican guy says, "Don't ever watch a reboot. They just use the things you like about your childhood to push a message to you." And that is one of my top points about why I will not be watching this. Is that you cannot mix nostalgia and for modern audiences. Those two things just do not work together. Um, Even when it comes to the character design for Rogue, and I know a lot of people say, like, look at what they did to the character design of Rogue. She's not a thick girl anymore. She's not voluptuous anymore. What is this? Why would you do this? It's like, don't you realize that they desexualize Rogue because you can't have sex appeal in media that you're marketing towards older audiences? That stuff's for school libraries, That's what it's for. You're supposed to have all your sexual material in children's schools. That's where it's for. It's not in for anything for adults. If it's for adults, then it has to be stripped away. You can't have, titties and hips on a female character and a and then you have to ask the question, like, is this even for adults? Kind of. It's Disney, so no, it's not really, right? So this you're just trapped. You're being squeezed and stretched at the same time, you know, because they want to have nostalgia, which is, oh, my heart, my childhood, and I saw so many of those people. Oh, my heart, my childhood. It's like, I got X-Men on DVD. I don't need to watch this shit. I don't need to see this. You know, it's 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 not for me because they've already made the changes and decisions that I know are going to be for modern audiences. They don't operate off of the sensibilities of X-Men 94, 95, 96, whatever. They don't operate off that anymore. So we're already done. You can't have both. It's not going to be made in any way except the way that certain people, the sensitivity readers, all of those people are going to be the ones dealing with it. They're the ones doing the character designs. They're the ones are going to be finalizing the script. I'm not interested. You know, the modern view of the X-Men is not something I've been interested in. In my opinion, and I've been saying this for a little while, the X-Men as a brand has been dead since like 2004, maybe 2002. When did they kill off Professor Xavier and then basically replace him with Cyclops? And then Cyclops turned heel and he became quote unquote mutant Hitler. That was it. I think uh, the last big X-Men storyline was House of M. That was it. Like the rest of these, everything that followed House of M has been trash. You know, so X-Men has been a dead brand for a really, really, really long time. And I know that X-Men still has a lot of faithful readers, but that's why this X-Men 97 thing is so potent. It's been such a potent brand because they keep bringing it back, and people still have the feelings of reading X-Men comics in the 80s and in the early 90s or in the mid 90s. They still have the feelings of watching the animated series, the cartoon and stuff. That's not the X-Men anymore, bro. Like that's the X-Men been dead a long time. You know, the first movie was okay, second movie was okay, third movie, mm-mm. And subsequent movies have not been good. You know, so the X-Men brand has been destroyed. You know, it's been run amok. It's, there was not too long ago where he was talking about changing the name from the X-Men to something else because now all the team, everybody on the team is a man. It was weird stuff that they've been doing in the X-Men comics. It's stuff they've been doing in the X-Men movies. And the X-Men 97 idea is just one last bite of the apple. They even been running a comic book series called X-Men 97. How many people have even known of that? You know? The X-Men 97 was a comic book series. They have been milking this thing for a long time. This is the culmination of it. They may do an X-Men 97 the movie, because everybody's favorite version of the X-Men is the late 80s, early to mid 90s X-Men. That's it. But we're 30 years off that now. That means the X-Men brand has been running through the shredder for 30 years. At least 20. I'm gonna give them at least 20. I think House of M was 2005. It's not good, man. It ain't been working out. I don't see how for modern audiences is gonna help this brand. I was gonna get to Bishop. I was gonna get to Bishop being there, but I wanted to get to Morph first. All right. But GK Aaron asked the question, and I want to answer the question. He says, "What's the appeal of X-Men?" Coming from someone who hates the X-Men. What the X-Men were. Everybody talks about how the X-Men were created to be an allegory for the civil rights movement. That is false. All right. They were basically a standard superhero team at first. Then Jack Kirby and Stan Lee kind of got bored with coming up with crazy and wacky origin stories, and he decided to go with they were born that way. So all the characters were born that way. Several years later, the X-Men were created in the 60s, maybe the 70s, 80s. Chris Claremont takes over. And he is the one who turned it into a race allegory. That basically mutants are, an allegory for the civil rights movement, and later the LGBT movement and trans movement and all this kind of stuff basically is now far left politics, essentially, when it comes to the X-Men, which is why the brand sucks right now, if we're being honest. But the appeal of the X-Men was not the politics, it was the soap opera. The X-Men was a long-running episodic soap opera. Superheroes, but there was always the love triangle with Jean and Cyclops and Wolverine, and then Storm having various run-ins with people, and you had the deep characters like Nightcrawler and Beast who look weird. They're blue. They look like monsters. You have a lot of the run-ins with current day quote unquote politics, like in the God Loves Man Kills. All that kind of stuff. Magneto was a villain with a lot of gravitas, being a Holocaust survivor. And it was very ironic that he was trying to annihilate all of humanity while also being a Holocaust survivor and truly believing that mutants are superior to regular people. And for a long time there, for at least maybe 15 years, the X-Men dominated Marvel Comics. It wasn't. I don't think they ever sold more than Spider-Man, but they were up there. It got to the point where the X-Men dominated Marvel to the point where they pretty much made the Fantastic Four irrelevant. They were going out into space doing the Dark Phoenix saga and all this kind of stuff. It made like the Inhumans and the Fantastic Four and the Guardians of the Galaxy. Everybody who usually does stuff in space became completely and totally irrelevant because the X-Men was doing stuff in space. And they were doing stuff across time. They were going to different, parallel dimensions and all this stuff. They were just everywhere. You know, they put X-Men pretty much everywhere you could put X-Men. There was at least 4 or 5 different X books, from the X-Men to Wolverine books to the New Mutants to Cable's book to the New Warrior, not New Warriors, that's not X-Men. It was Exiles. It was just so many different X-Men teams that they were floating. There were so many mutants. They were everywhere. And that's the brand blew up. You can only push so much of that crap, right? Um, and there was only so much of it, but it was a soap opera, you know. Especially when it became more about Cyclops and his family. That's kind of when I started losing interest in the X-Men. Like he got a secret brother. Oh, okay, thanks. I like Vulcan, but come on. His dad is really a space pirate, y'all. Oh, okay, sure, whatever. Anyway, the allure of the X-Men is that it was basically a long-running soap opera that talked about really about social issues in a way that was very mature, that lent credence to both sides, where you saw the mutants doing horrible stuff to the point where you actually can understand that why humans would hate mutants, because some of these mutants are absolutely dastardly. They're evil, you know, and they're dangerous. And these people, they don't. It's not like they were chosen, like Captain America. It's not like there were good people, who suffered accidents, like Spider-Man or the Fantastic Four. This was something that was thrust upon them, and you will have a situation like I believe it was in the X-Men movie where Scott's powers erupted and he destroyed a school while he was in it. Something he didn't have any control over his powers because he didn't know what was going to happen. And that was part of the fear of the X-Men, and the interest of it is that it was not something these people were doing. It was something that was thrust upon them. And then they had to make the decision to be responsible with their power, to be responsible with the gift that they were given. And that's where Professor Xavier came in. Later on, of course, it became Professor Xavier has child soldiers, which is technically true. He has child soldiers. He runs a fascist camp full of fighting machines. Yeah, sure. All that might be true, but the idea was somebody's got to combat Magneto, and he's building an evil army. He wants to destroy all of humanity. He wanted to hit humanity with a meteor. I mean, come on. How that's cartoonishly evil, like. But that was part of the appeal, is there was a little something for everybody. Mr. Sinister wants to make the ultimate mutant baby or something like that. It's just really crazy stuff that was happening. How the mutants interact with the other characters, Spider-Man and Captain America and stuff. But the X-Men craze, like all crazes, it came and it went. As they put more X-Men in more books, I think it actually lost it. It did what it always does, which is the bubble popped. People got tired of X-Men. People got tired of there being so many X characters. There's too many mutants. So when they did House of M and Scarlet Witch was like no more mutants. To me, that was probably the best thing that ever happened to them, because they got to find the mutants that only the mutants that you need, and bring those characters back. But then they just decided to do whatever it is they're doing right now. Um, it's it's pretty dumb. Did I see that the X-Men is mostly white? Um, yeah, it is what it is. It was. Wasn't Cable his son? Yeah, Cable is he's Cyclops' son from the future. The X-Men became the Scott Summers story. Him and Jean Grey, they took over 100 different versions of the Phoenix. None of that shit mattered after Jean did what she did with the Dark Phoenix saga. But most of the Phoenix stuff was stupid. The Phoenix Five, I'm like horse shit. But Cable was cool. Yeah, they gave Cable a couple of series of him operating in the main timeline, him operating in his own past. You know, they did some really cool stuff with Cable. Then they gave him an adopted daughter, Hope Summers. who isn't even his daughter, even though everybody thinks he is. She is. She's not. She's not. Uh, but that brings me to, I was going to talk about Morph, but let's talk about from Cable's time. Why is he in this series? Now, I'm pretty sure you're supposed to watch it to get the answer to that question. But the Bishop is not an X-Man. You know, he's not a member of the team. So that means he's there for diversity reasons. Okay? That's why he's there. He's there for diversity reasons. Now, you mean to tell me you couldn't find any other black mutant to put in this show? You had to put Bishop in there? Now, Bishop is cool. He was cool. I don't know what they've done to Bishop now. He's probably gay or something like that in the comics now. I don't know. But back when I was reading comics, Bishop was cool. All right? I used to read X-Men comics. Bishop was cool. You know, he tried to kill Hope Summers. He had these run-ins with Cable. You know, it was cool. I just don't understand why he's in this, because he's not on the team. He's not an X-Man. AJ3 says, I miss cartoon villains and comic books. Whatever happened to that? Well, everybody started thinking that the villains were right. There's people online right now arguing about the bugs in Starship Troopers. Like, these people are retarded. Like, how are you humanizing the murderous bugs in Starship Troopers? These people are crazy. You know, it's like those lunatic anime fans who are like, Attack on Titan is fascist. It's like, okay, I give you some credit when it comes to Full Metal Alchemist, that, you know, it might be a little bit fascist, but Attack on Titan, it's either have a strong military or get eaten by giant humanoid creatures. What would you rather do? Are you really going to feel sympathy for the Titans? You know, you can't. You know, you have to take the world as it is. In the world, this is the best option, or this is, you know, an optimal way of operating. You don't have time for diplomacy and democracy when at any given time a giant monster could show up and eat half the town. You don't have time for elections. I'm sorry, you know, like, that's the least of your problems is elections. Okay, but Full Metal Alchemist, all right, you can say that's fascist. I mean, but Attack on Titan is not fascist, bro. It's a different world. It's, you know, but it's the same thing with like Starship Troopers. Like, oh, it's a fascist regime. It's like they fighting giant bugs. They have to optimize their society in a way where they're in a state of constant war. And it's not exactly a war that they chose, because it's a war that they're fighting in their own backyard. It's a completely different ballgame if it's a war they chose, you know. But we live in a society now where people don't know the difference between heroes and villains. And everybody thinks that the villains are really the good guys. There's people who think that, you know, Magneto was about to kill Charles Xavier, but then Charles Xavier did his mind thing and made Magneto relive the Holocaust, which I gotta say is brutal. It's brutal. But the dude was trying to kill you. You know, like, you didn't kill him. You just, you know, reminded him of, you know, the crazy world that he used to live in, and maybe he has the opportunity to change himself at that point. But that's just how the people think. It's better for Magneto to kill you than for you to defend yourself and make him relive the horrors of the Holocaust. It's just ridiculous. Mr. Sinister was a trans person. That's why she was so evil and obsessed with kids. Isn't the other Mr. Sinister, well, Mrs. Sinister or whatever? Isn't she like a clone or something? I don't think he was trans. AJ3 says, I hate that part of House of M. They all deep powered all the worthless nobody care mutants. If you were running Marvel, how would you get rid of all the mutants, including the X-Men? I think that Scarlet Witch having the ability to get rid of them is the best you could do. Either that or Doctor Strange. Somebody's got to get rid of all these fucking mutants. You know, like, or you might as well turn everybody into a mutant, dog. I always said that the X-Men felt like a series that, much like the Inhumans, probably should have happened outside of the regular Marvel universe. When they decided to put the mutants on their own planet or something like that, I was like, okay, that kind of works. But I do think that it became too many of them. They needed to have their own space. They needed their own area. They were dominating too much of Marvel. It was too much. It was way too much. I hated Cable because people pick him in Marvel or the fighting game. Haha. Cable was very cool. It was cool. Storm is there, ain't she black? Yeah, but they had to have a black male character. So, and I wonder what they're gonna do to Storm. That's my question. They're probably gonna have Storm overthrow Cyclops and be the leader of the team. Bishop isn't an X-Men. Explain. Well, he's from a different time. Bishop is from the future with Cable. He's not an X-Men. He's in the series, but Bishop isn't even born until way in the future. So if Bishop is in this series, then Cable is somewhere in this series, presumably, right? Because that's the timeline he comes from. Cable is not an X-Man. I don't know why he's in there. I have no idea. You can have sympathy for the Titans. They were made that way as punishment by the monarchy or the other nation. Yeah, but you didn't know that at the time. Like as people are, when I started hearing people say that Attack on Titans was fascist, we hadn't gotten to the Marlians turning these people into Titans yet. We hadn't even gotten there. It was, oh my God, they're pledging allegiance. They have a king. They have like 3 different militaries. I'm like, wait a minute. They're gonna get eaten by like giant beasts. Like we need to throw them some bail. All right. Now later on, yeah, you do feel a little bit of sympathy for the Titans because it is a punishment, which I think is a mistake. That's a narrative choice, but whatever. What's the point of the Inhumans if you have the X-Men? Well, there really was no point. What's the point of the Eternals if you have the Inhumans and the X-Men? There are no points. The Eternals were supposed to be like godlike creatures. That didn't work out. And the Inhumans were supposed to be they were supposed to be like the saviors of the Kree Empire or something like that. They were supposed to be the next evolution of the Kree. That clearly didn't work out either. But you have to think about it. They weren't thinking about that when they created these characters, how these characters were going to overlap, and how so many of them were going to essentially be the same. When they did the Inhumans X-Men battle thing, that sucked. That sucked ass because it did nothing but make people hate the Inhumans when they really shouldn't have. It's a completely different ball game. The Inhumans had slaves. Yeah, they did. Yeah, they did. They had slaves, and they were better off with they were better off with slaves. By the way, they could be the heel version of the X-Men, I guess, but because Black Bolt is basically heel version of Cyclops, but they decided to go away from that. I don't know what the hell they were doing. It's so stupid how they made Morph non-binary. That's an instant pass. I'll talk about that in a second. Ever since Batman the Animated Series, Mr. Freeze, everyone decides simply was the villain by making them more media for them. That did a credible amount of damage to how villains are perceived in media. Because it made Mr. Freeze so sympathetic that and it won so many awards and all this kind of stuff, but it also created that idea that Batman is just a bully who beats up, people who would otherwise be normally well-adjusted folks. And it's like, nah, Mr. Freeze is a monster, bro. Like Mr. Freeze is a beast. Like he was, and it shows you in the episode that he was heartless and he didn't really care. He cared about his wife, but he didn't care about his henchmen. He was going to kill that guy. It was a bunch of stuff going on. But that created the sympathy of the villain. Even though, some villains had sympathy built in already. But sympathy for the villain has been very, very damaging. You can have that, but the idea should be that there is no excuse. Everybody who had been, it's just a little aside. I saw some people say this about Vince because Vince was sexually assaulted as a kid, and people would say like Vince used to be a victim, and now he's a victimizer. There's no excuse. It's like, well, there's no excuse when it comes to these fictional villains either. No matter how sympathetic you want to try to make the Joker about his family dying or whatever the fuck, he's still a mass murdering psycho, and somebody should put a bullet in his head. You know, so it's very weird. Back in 2021, the X-Men terraformed Mars with all the Omega level mutants, which later on you find out that Storm is the ruler of the Mars. Yeah, yeah. They had their own island. They had their own planet. That's stupid. That's it's they tried. They tried to separate all this crap. Marvel tried to make the Inhumans a big thing when they couldn't get the right film rights to X-Men. Yeah, that created a lot of the animosity for the Inhumans. I was a fan of the Inhumans. Again, I think they were a little bit more interesting because as a society, they were more elitist, they were more autocratic, but they were also more internally preoccupied. They didn't really. The Inhumans were the opposite of the X-Men. The X-Men want to be a part of society. The Inhumans do not want to be a part of society. And when they started acting like they wanted to be a part of society, that was weird, you know, because that has always flied in the face of everything they wanted to do. They was a very insular society. Everything about them was supposed to be secretive. You know, the Terrigen mist and all that kind of stuff was supposed to be. You're not supposed to know what that is. You know, and then they did all this weird stuff with it. And they were like, "Oh, we could just make the Inhumans something, and we're gonna put Medusa as the leader." You're like, "Oh no!" For modern audiences, killed it. It then made Medusa unlikable. If you were gonna do that, at least make people like her. She became incredibly unlikable. The way that they broke up her and Black Bolt scarred me forever. I would never read another Inhumans book after I read that shit. I was like, I'm done with this. I read The Death of the Inhumans though. I really wish it hadn't gone that bad, but it is what it is. And the Black Bolt solo series was pretty good. The rest of their books, especially recent years, have been trash. All right, let's talk about Morph being non-binary. The idea that Morph is non-binary, of course, is ridiculous. The issue we're trying to deal with here is some people are saying that the series is set in the 90s. I don't know if that's the case. Is the series set in the 90s? If so, then non-binary, the language didn't even exist at the time. But here's the issue that I have with non-binary Morph. All mutants, they gain their powers through puberty or something to that effect, right? Morph would have had to have been born and live his life as something before he became non-binary. Now, here is the issue, because they did this with Mystique in the comic book, where Mystique could have babies because she can shapeshift. So they're in their idea, in their formulation, if you can shapeshift, you're non-binary. All right? They did the same thing with Loki. All right, Loki can shapeshift, he can become a woman at will. They made him bisexual or something like that in the comics. Now, if you go by Norse mythology, Loki has sex with like animals and shit. All right, so okay, if you go by Norse mythology, Loki being a freak is what it is, and he can change his sex in Norse mythology. But the ability to be able to change your form and making you gender fluid or something to that effect, it says that you are essentially a blank slate. Now, blank slateism is what a lot of left-wing politics is based on. It's based off the idea that you're not born with anything. You're not born with any pre-existing beliefs or any pre-existing cultural remnants, anything. They think that the idea that boys and girls like different things, like boys are interested in things and girls are interested in people, that's all cultural. That's not nothing to do with the fact that you are a boy or a girl, even though that's been proven false, even with like monkeys, it's been proven false like over and over again. They continuously believe in blank slateism, that men and women are 100% the same, above the neck, or equality begin. How do they put it? equality begins above the neck or something like that, even though humans, and there's female brains and there's male brains. That thing is true. Gonads and eggs, these things are real. So that means when Morph was born, before he could shapeshift, he had to be either a boy or a girl. All right. The idea that he's non-binary now, or maybe that's the way he views himself, might have something to do with his ability to shapeshift. Okay, but we have to. What was he before? What was he before that? You know, the root of everybody's problems is blank slateism, the belief that everything is cultural and nothing is innate. Nothing, you were born with nothing. They don't believe in IQ. They don't believe in that race or whatever is based off genetics. They'll call it ethnicity, which is basically just a euphemism for race. They don't believe that there's male brains and female brains. They think that women are just as strong and fast as men. It's ridiculous. It's just absolutely ridiculous. It's when you have that sort of mentality, you're not going to come up with the right answer. I can even understand you want to say, well, Morph can morph body, so didn't make sense for him to accept being male or female, because he can be male or female at any time, due to his power set. But he's got to be something, like his powers didn't kick in until he was in puberty. So when he was in elementary school, was he a boy or a girl? you know, you know. Don't tell me he always felt like he was a girl, because he can shapeshift into pretty much anything. I don't know what the limits of Morph's powers are, but he can pretty much shapeshift into pretty much anything. So why just be boy or a girl? He could have shapeshifted into a dinosaur. So that means, could he have been a dinosaur when he was a kid? No, nobody would have ever thought about that. This stuff doesn't make sense. If you want to say that Morph eschews the idea of being a man or a woman because he could be whatever he wants at any time, fine. But then when you make him Clayface, where basically he doesn't have a face, or is he wearing a mask? I don't know what it is. And you're like, what is this? Now all of a sudden, Morph doesn't have a gender. There's nothing concrete to him. He's whatever we want him to be at any given time, which sucks. It sucks. It doesn't work. It's no. That's it's hard to get into debates with people who believe in blank slateism. It just doesn't work. WG Fields says, I remember the stream you did about John claiming he's a victim. When you said a lack of accountability is a bigger issue than shrooms and other clown world stuff, do you believe the lack of accountability is the root of the problems? A lot of it is, yes. I think if we held people accountable for a lot of their own problems, we could fix a lot of issues that we have in our society. I mean, look at how many people are being busted plagiarizing papers in college now. If we held people accountable for all that stuff and just started kicking people out, if people were held accountable for, their lack of performance in schools, if people were held accountable for their lack of performance at their jobs, if people were held accountable for the lack of intellectual rigor that they actually took into certain subjects, we wouldn't believe 90% of the shit that we would believe. Now, the world might be a bit of a rougher place, because there are some people out there who believe things that can be scientifically proven true, or they've got the studies to back up what they believe, but these aren't very, very nice things. Like, IQ, race and IQ. There's a lot of really good evidence behind Black people having lower IQs on average than whites. You can question the methodology, and it doesn't say much about, individuals clearly. And things don't always work out the way that they want them to, because certain whites have lower IQs than others. Certain whites have lower IQs than even Black people. Certain Black societies have higher IQs in certain white societies. I think Nigerians have a higher IQ than the Scottish, for instance. But you don't want to live in a society that's based on how you can live off of your race and IQ, about group-based differences, even though there might be some kind of evidence behind it. You don't want to live in that world, but you should stop firing people for saying something that they can scientifically prove, unless you can prove that the information was falsely attained, that it was falsified, that it was plagiarized, or whatever. Then you might want to take the weird stuff, kick people out and all that. But if you just held people accountable, man, a lot of our problems will be fixed. If people were held accountable for their own issues, we wouldn't have a lot of our social programs. There are absolutely things that people can't help. Getting into car accidents or having TBIs or traumatic brain injuries, you can't help that. I mean, it is what it is. If you have a genetic predisposition to schizophrenia or bipolar disorder, there's nothing you can do about that. If you were born with like sickle cell or Tay-Sachs, if you're Jewish, there's nothing you can do about that. There's nothing you can do about certain things. But there's a lot of people who suffer from a lot of things that are just choices, bad, poor fucking choices. And if you just let people live in their poor choices, they'll either die or they'll fix it. And most people will fix it before they die. But what we have done is we made people comfortable blaming other people for their problems. And I don't necessarily like that. Cal died as the voice actor for Wolverine. He's 57 years old. Is that why his voice sounds so different? Only thing you're accountable for is not loving Israel and not loving the gays and the troons. That's pretty much it. Because his voice sucks. Wolverine's voice sucks in this series. He sounds nothing like the original Wolverine. It's fine, but it is what it is. All in all, the animation looks cheap. Disney doesn't spend a lot of money on animation anymore. To look back at old Disney cartoons and to look back at 90s cartoons and look at the love that they put into the animation and see how I don't understand animation outside of anime is the only thing that is getting, well, movies are too. They're getting actively worse over time because everybody's looking to cut corners, and I'm thinking it's got to be a lot to do with animation unions, and that's just me guessing. I don't know for sure, but I would guess it's probably unions. I would guess. I don't understand why you wouldn't outsource that shit to like Korea or something to make it better. To outsource it to the Japanese just to make it better and make it cheaper because people enjoy Japanese anime. And if Disney showed up with a ton of money and said, "We want you to make a X-Men, series," that would be great. But the animation looks cheap. I don't like the voices. I saw that Magneto was taking over the school, so they're going to try to humanize and redeem Magneto. See, Magneto is the kind of villain where you can redeem him because he always has the Holocaust thing that you could play off of. But in recent years, that's been the ploy, is to kill off Professor Xavier and replace him with Magneto. And then, eventually Cyclops is the guy. And I'm not a big fan of that. It's not my thing. I don't know why everybody hates Professor Xavier all of a sudden. It's really weird. Oh, Professor Xavier, he was in love with Jean Grey. That was back when Stan Lee was writing it, wasn't it? I mean, come on. You could just not go through with that and just kind of ignore it, right? But I'm definitely shivering me timbers about what they're gonna do to Gambit. and I'm not happy because I already know that Gambit is not going to be Gambit. You know, I just don't. I don't see it. I don't see it. I feel bad because I know that these things are terrible. Where are you, a Cyclops or right kind of guy? Uh, no, Cyclops was wrong, but I always looked at it as Cyclops, took up the Magneto. Uh, he took up Magneto's dream. He forsaked Xavier's and he took up Magneto's, and that's that was a huge mistake. That was a huge mistake. I don't see why they did that, but I guess they figured Cyclops was too boring as a good guy. He's still, I guess, a good guy, but you have to be looking at things from a mutant perspective in order to think that. But militant Cyclops is not my favorite. I like good guy Cyclops. I don't like militant uh, Cyclops. I can't stand it. It's stupid. It's just one of those things that happened in the comic books that I just kind of looked and was like, I don't get it. I don't get it. Um, but maybe it ain't for me to get. But everything about it, Avengers versus X-Men, I was like, ugh, it was gross. I liked when Cable was fighting he jumped the Avengers. I like that. That was cool. X Sanction, that was fun. I may read that tonight. It's a very short. It's only like 4 issues, but that was fun. The rest of that shit though, the Phoenix Five and all that, we're gonna bring the Phoenix to Earth. Mm-mm, mm-mm, mm-mm. Because they started treating the Phoenix like a god or something. The Phoenix is not a fucking mutant. That's the thing that kept throwing me for a loop. I'm like, it's not a mutant. It's an alien spirit, I guess you could say. Technically, is it a spirit? It's a being. It's an entity. It's not a fucking mutant. So why are they like summoning it? Like this is dumb. This sucks. And they keep doing it. They won't let it go away. Cyclops is powerful on his own. He don't need the fucking Phoenix. But the Phoenix is basically just it was a substitute for Jean Grey. His obsession with Jean Grey. Still didn't like it. Was not a fan. Would not recommend Grant Morrison. X-Men would not recommend that either. I don't like Grant Morrison. I don't like Bendis either, so would not recommend Bendis. Even though I don't know if you're a fan of them, you might like it, but I don't like it. Expect to see Kamala Khan. Oh yeah, she's going to be on there. I don't think they have not officially changed her to a mutant yet in the comics, but they have played that game in the TV show, and that seems to be the direction that they're going in. Is they're going to use her as a mutant going forward? I don't know. I don't. Whatever. Uh, it don't matter. I don't think it's going to make Kamala more popular if she's a mutant. I don't think so. I don't see it being more popular as a mutant. I see it being about the same. People are not. If the character is not interesting, then it doesn't matter whether they're a mutant or an inhuman or anything else. That's the same thing with these spider characters. Like it don't matter how you get the powers if they're not interesting. Nobody gives a shit. If you create a way that the character people are like the character, they don't care how they got their powers. They don't care what subgroup they work in or they operate in either. You know, it just is what it is. But that's it. X-Men '97. I don't think I'm gonna watch it. I may watch the first episode, but I really have no plans of watching any of it. All right, so Chainsaw Man number 14. I just want to talk about this for like 4 or 5 minutes. The entirety of the thing in Chainsaw Man number 14 has been Denji and Asha and their relationship and the humor that is used when they go on a date. So they go on a date to the aquarium, and Asha, she thinks that. Oh, well, I don't know if you guys been paying attention to Chainsaw Man. So Denji is Chainsaw Man. Asa is she's the War Devil now. She is now technically the main character of this book. They switched the main character from Denji, who is Chainsaw Man. He was 1 through 12. He was the main character, 1 through 11. For volumes 12, 13, and 14, the main character has been Asa, who has been the War Devil. And the War Devil is hunting Chainsaw Man. She wants to kill him. She doesn't know that Denji is Chainsaw Man. Asa and Denji go to the same school. Denji is a horn dog who wants to get laid. He wants girls to like him and all this kind of stuff. He's trying to use Chainsaw Man to become famous so he can get girls. That's his. It's humorous. It's hilarious. But it follows because Denji is, a homeless bum and always has been, who is easily controlled by girls. He's always betrayed by women too. So the devil that lives within Isa, the War Devil, she wants to turn Denji into a weapon. The War Devil has the ability to turn anything that she possesses into a weapon, which includes people. So if you're her friend or something like that, she could turn you into a weapon. So the plan is to get Asa to get Denji to fall in love with her, so she could turn Denji into a weapon and use him to kill Chainsaw Man. That's the plan. So they go on a date to the aquarium. And it's incredibly humorous that Asa has studied up on starfish and sea anemones and all this kind of stuff. And she's going to impress Denji by her knowledge of all of these sea creatures, only to find out that Denji just wants to see penguins. So it's funny that she is trying to impress this brickhead idiot. He's so simple. And that's like what I mean by revealing character, is that the character of Denji is just a simpleton. He's hungry, he eats. He wants to eat ice cream every day, or whatever. He doesn't have deep. He's complex in his way, but he's not like super complex. You're not going to impress him with your knowledge of starfish. Like he found that to be boring, So even though you think nothing is happening in the book, because they are spending all this time in this aquarium, they're not out fighting huge battles and all this kind of stuff. Just through conversation and through the jokes that are happening in the series, you're learning more about Asa as a character. You're learning more about Denji as a character. You're learning more about their likes and dislikes, what kind of people they are. You actually learn that if you've been reading the series, you know that Denji always gets betrayed by the girls that he falls in love with or whatever. And she tries to turn him into a weapon in the middle of the book. She tries to turn him into a sword, and it didn't work. And she was shocked that it didn't work. And she starts feeling down on herself because she's like, maybe he just doesn't like me. And she's like, maybe I should just die. Like he doesn't like me. Maybe I should just go die. And like the threat is coming in, all this kind of stuff, the famine devil and all that. But I thought it was very interesting that people sometimes shy away from using humor, and you shy away from what's usually considered downtime in your story because you think, oh, well, if I just have them sitting at a table talking, the reader is going to get bored. And if they do it too long, yes, because that's how Marvel Comics and stuff is now, where there's so much stuff in coffee shops and restaurants, and there's a bunch of people sitting around talking all the time in a story that should be mostly about action. But in Chainsaw Man, what they did is they did something very interesting. They put them in a threatening situation where they were in this aquarium, and then they couldn't get out. Um, and but it was the point of it was to give Asa more time to get Denji to fall in love with her, and he really does like her, but she can't betray him the way that she wants to because he's a devil. He's not a regular boy. But I think this is This is very good. I've really been impressed with Chainsaw Man um, as a series. You know, it's not as talked about as it was a couple of months, maybe a year or so ago, because the series is not coming out soon enough. I don't know what's going on. Like they talked about the manga shortage. I guess that's still going on because Spy Family hasn't had a new volume in forever. Um, and all of these other books are coming out sporadically. They used to come out pretty regularly, but now not so much. I read the 1 through 12 of Black Lagoon. I don't know if you guys ever watched Black Lagoon, but the manga is pretty good. It's not finished. It's been 20 years and this thing is not finished. If I'd have known it wasn't finished, I never would have started reading this shit. Apparently, Black Lagoon, whew, it began in like 2001. And here it is, 2022. 2022 was the last volume released, and that was volume 12. There's at least one volume left, volume 13, and it hasn't been released in the United States yet. So I'm sitting here with 12 volumes of Black Lagoon and an unfinished story. Typically, the reason I wait so long to jump on a series is to make sure that it's over. Because I don't want to get caught up like Berserk. You're sitting here with 50 fucking books and there's no ending in sight, you know? So, so a Black Lagoon is very good. It's very simple. It's a it's basically I don't want to say Cowboy Bebop, but on a boat because it's not entirely true. But that's essentially what it is. It's a series of missions and different self-contained stories that happen over the course of time in this book, in the series. I really like it though. I like Black Lagoon. It's very aggressive. He said the author is coming out of depression. Well, holy shit. Um, he was in depression for 20 years or something. I don't know what's going on with these. This is the downside, I guess, of manga is that once the writer, if something happens to him, it takes forever for the series to get back on track. Like the guy who's been writing and drawing Hunter x Hunter has been sick pretty much every other week for like 10 years. You know, like imagine being a guy who was reading that book and now you get a Hunter x Hunter chapter like a Christmas present. You know, like it's you know, I couldn't imagine. I don't even like Hunter x Hunter like that. Um, so you're looking at this thing, you're like, ooh, that's a kick in the nuts. What's pissing me off though is how series that are already over, like Parasite, and Dark Horse can't get these books out on time. It seems it's like it takes forever to get a new Parasite hardcover release. Same thing with Fist of the North Star. It's like why not go ahead and Fist of the North Star is over, Parasite is over. What's taking so long? You know, I don't know. I don't get it. Maybe it ain't for me to get. I wish it was though. Oh yeah, I've been reading. I got a new series that I've been reading. I forgot about it. I'm gonna go over here and reach it. Yomatsu Hagaihi or whatever. Um, Yomotsuhegui. The Tree of Death. It's about a tree that can give you eternal life if you eat the fruit. And the main character, his family was murdered, and he spent 8 years in prison because he killed one of the guys who killed his family. He comes out of prison, finds out like one of the guys is immortal. You can't kill him, and then they do some shenanigans in which he becomes immortal too, and he's going to go around and killing all these immortal creatures after he avenged his family. I probably wouldn't have had him avenge his family so soon. He avenges his family in the first volume. Spoilers, but I probably wouldn't have done it so soon. But they did what they did. It's kind of like Momo the Blood Taker in that way, where Momo the Blood Taker was all about um, revenge, a guy trying to get revenge on vampires, and in order to do so, he ended up becoming a vampire. But the story continued after he got his revenge. That's the one downside of revenge stories is sometimes you do the revenge and you do it pretty early in the book, and you still have to come up with something else. But if you're good, I think Momo the Blood Taker is still pretty good, so can't complain. That Yomo book is okay. I'm waiting for the second volume. It ought to be fine. Usually he releases a chapter every 3 months, although I think he hasn't released a chapter since last year. You talking about Black Lagoon? Because I don't understand what's taking so long, man. Like we were nearing the end of finally figuring out who Dutch is. I think we did figure out who Dutch is. That he's been living a double life, and they did something that was very intelligent. Um, this is for writers out there. You don't have to tell people anything about your characters. You know, you can reveal that later. Because Black Lagoon, you go through the series, the only character you know anything about is Rock, who's the main character. You know, and because you see his origin, and that's pretty much it. Everybody else's origin is shrouded in mystery. We're just now getting to the origin of Dutch, who is the captain of the ship, and figuring out that he is more than what he seemed, and he is not what he claimed to be. He claimed to be a Vietnam vet. Turns out that it was bullshit, and now we figure out he was a terrorist of some description. He's some kind of African terrorist or whatever. So you learn more about the characters as you go on, which is very Bebop. Because Bebop didn't tell you shit about these characters, and you just learn more about them as you watch the show, and more things were revealed to you over time. And it's the same thing with Black Lagoon, where you follow characters. Revy, the two-hand gun shooter. You learn a little bit more about her as you go along. So you learn that she's Chinese, but she's from America. She used to be a police officer, but you haven't seen like how that affects her life. Like, how does she become a person on this ship yet? You learn that Benny is Jewish. He's good with computers, but why is he on this ship? We don't know. The only person why they on the ship or why they do anything is Rob. You know, and that could be very interesting because now you spend so much time building up other characters. You could focus on the story that you're telling and not given origins, I guess you could say. They even did the same thing with the maid, Roberta. They introduced her as pretty much a badass. You learn a little bit more about her, and then she develops a pill habit later. It's a really good series. I think that Roberta stuff lasted far too long though. It was like 3 volumes. That shit was crazy. Shit was entirely too long. But other than that, it's a good series. I think it's very enjoyable. If it was finished, I would suggest it to everybody. Hopefully, he finishes before he croaks or some shit like that. I don't really have much else. I don't have nothing else. So, thanks everybody for stopping by. I'll talk to you guys later.